2023 meeting minutes were posted after the meeting last year. Could I have a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm so sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Like sign opposed? Motion carries. I'd like a motion to approve today's agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Who is that?
Timothy Howard.
And you're a member, sir?
Yes, sir.
First, last name?
Howard.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Like sign opposed? Motion carries. I would like to bring to your attention some of the work that your leadership on this association has been working on. Earlier this year, your board members, committee chairs, and some of our former board members got together and spent 2 full days in a sort of a retreat type setting. And we discussed what the vision for our organization is for Lake Gaston and what our mission is in order to accomplish that vision. If you were able to pick up an agenda for today, on the back side of it, you will see what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but I think it's important that you are aware of what this organization is attempting to achieve and will work on. Our vision is for Lake Gaston to be a vibrant community, exceptionally high-quality lake, and a premier recreation destination. That's what drives our economy. That's what brought us all here. That's what sustains our community. Our mission, then, this is what our association is working on to achieve that vision. We will promote the highest quality of life by conserving the natural environment, engaging with our membership, and building relationships with the Lake Gaston community and its stakeholders. There are a tremendous number of stakeholders that have a stake in this lake and its ability to thrive and benefit us and the community. I could go on, name them, starting with Dominion, the state agencies, the Weed Council, NC State. We develop relationships and work with all of these stakeholders to accomplish this mission. If you didn't get a chance to pick this up and look at it, if you would before you leave, especially if you are a member now, I think you'll find it insightful, and it will give you an idea as to what this association is actively working on. And hopefully you'll see that there may be a role that you as an individual can play in helping us work on that mission and achieve that vision. Okay, another piece of business before us, bylaw changes. Every year we look at our bylaws and we attempt to make any improvements or clarity. This particular rendition, the number of changes in it, they're primarily for clarity's sake. A lot of it's just punctuation and things of that nature. But I will bring to your attention one important change in the bylaws that we're proposing, and you will vote on in a minute, is that we are no longer requiring every membership meeting to have meeting minutes. If you've been attending our monthly membership meetings, you can tell that over the last year we've made some changes. We're trying to hold membership meetings. Periodically we'll have some of them in the evening to bring in some of the folks who aren't here during the days. You know, they may be busy working. We're recording those, allowing for people that aren't able to attend to have that opportunity to participate. We're not conducting business during those monthly membership meetings. We want it to be more informative for you and we feel it's really not necessary for you to get wrapped up in the governance issues that the board is engaged in regularly. If you have an interest in that, our board meetings are open to anyone who would like to attend and learn more about how we're running the association. So with that said, the bylaws, the proposed changes were posted on our bulletin. They've been out there now for 6 months. We received limited feedback on that. I would like a motion to accept these bylaw changes.
Motion to accept the changes.
Mr. Goldsworthy, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Rushton. All those in favor?
Aye.
Like sign opposed? Thank you. One more quick business item, treasurer's report. This was made available, copy of it back there at the desk as you walked in. This is the year-to-date status of our organization financially. Currently, we are favorable with expenses. That's typical this time of year because we really start, some of our work accelerates in the summer months. I will make a note that our income forecast was based upon a membership number that we're still shy on. Right now, our current membership is 2,100. Our budget was built on a membership of 2,200. So we still have room to grow in terms of membership this year to reach that goal. If we had 10 people that were regular members and they upped it to a lifetime membership, we'd accomplish it this year. Something to think about.
I should know this, but how many homes are there on the lake?
When you say homes, one thing I would suggest to you is our community consists of not just homes on the lake,
Right.
but of the water property owners. So that the closest estimate we have is that it is in the range of 8,000 to 10,000.
Okay.
So maybe you're making a point that our membership has a lot of opportunity to grow. We want to represent this entire lake community. We struggle with this. It's an ongoing effort, and I'm not making a pitch for membership right now. If you're not a member, you probably had a chance to talk with Brian when you came in. But just to point out the fact that we're in a solid financial situation, but we still need to strive to grow that membership. So anything that you can do to help us would be appreciated. Our next business item is nomination and election of directors. Jane, could you come forward, please? Jane is our nominating chair, and her task is to bring before you a number of individuals that are being nominated to serve as board members.
Mr. President, according to the bylaws, the membership shall vote on the appointment of directors at the annual meeting. No names of candidates were received by petition from the membership. So, as the chairman of the nominating committee, I wish to present the following. Would you like them to stand?
Sure, if they're here, there's a couple that aren't, but go ahead.
Halifax County Director Daniel Scooter Bohan, and I don't believe he's here.
Yeah.
Warren County Director Bob Allen. Mecklenburg County Director Jennifer Allman. And Mecklenburg County Director James Stringer. And according to the bylaws, as no director can be nominated by the membership of the nominating committee, we wish to present for election for a fourth term, Brunswick County Director John Cataldo. John?
Real quick, I think Pat Price is also,
I think she was not here last year.
that's correct. So she's also, and she is has been serving as our secretary very effectively, but she's unfortunately with family in Wisconsin today. And I will point out, John Cataldo, typically we like directors to serve 3 terms and then rotate off and bring in some fresh blood, so to speak. But John, he has served in multiple leadership roles in this association. He served as president, vice president, more recently our government relations committee. And since we're lacking in Brunswick County representation at this point, we asked him to carry on into a 4th term, and he's willing to do that, and thank you for that. So, with that said, this is your slate of nominees for the board of directors. I would like a motion to accept the slate.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We will now vote on this slate of directors. All in favor?
Aye.
Like sign opposed? Thank you, Jane, for your work in bringing this great group of people to join us. And it's always good to have, we're going to have turnover. I guess I need to also mention the fact that Eric Wooster, who has been serving as our vice president, recently resigned. He was also serving as our safety committee, and we are going to miss Eric for sure. Okay, real quick, upcoming events. Oh, thank you. Will those, Bob and Jennifer and Jane, would you, Jane's also, right? And John, yeah. If you stand, please. Jamie's reminded me of.
All right, you have agreed to serve in a voluntary position as a board member to support the Lake Gaston Association's missions and goals. If you are fully aware of and accept these responsibilities, listen to this oath of office, and if you agree, indicate by saying I will. Please raise your right hands. I pledge to perform the responsibilities of my elected position to the best of my ability and to devote the time, talent, and work necessary to achieve success in this endeavor. I further pledge to uphold the bylaws of the Lake Gaston Association. If you so pledge, please respond by saying, I will.
I will.
Welcome. Thanks for keeping me on track, Tammy. Okay. Real quick, a couple things that are upcoming. We've got the Habitat Enhancement Project, which takes place in 2 weeks' time. John Franz is leading that effort. We have plenty of volunteers. Plenty of volunteers. I think we've got 10 people in addition to. So we're working with the NC State, North Carolina Wildlife, Virginia Wildlife. It's a joint effort to promote native vegetation. We get way back up in these shallow areas of the lake, and the primary focus is to displace the invasive hydrilla, limbia, and this is a long-term project, but that's proceeding ahead. Lake Cleanup, Shannon, our Lake Cleanup chair, she has been working diligently on promoting that. If you have an interest in helping with roadside cleanup, go to our website. There's information out there. There are what we call cleanup kits. The trash picker-uppers, trash bags, safety vests, they're over here at the Chamber of Commerce. You can go over there, check them out if you want to clean up some road sign in your neighborhood or anywhere else. That equipment is available for your use.
And if you do that, please take pictures and send them to us, and we'll highlight you on our Facebook page and on in our bulletin, just to let people know. A lot of people are complaining about the pollution on the side of the roads on Facebook, but nobody's going out doing anything, so we want to highlight the people who do go out and do that.
Thanks. Yeah, we want to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. We got the Littleton Festival coming up right at the end of August, right there, Labor Day weekend. Brian's going to be manning, and other directors will be manning the booth there, promoting our work, helping educate our community about various things that we're doing and vegetation control issues that we're involved in. Bob Allen, who's currently co-chairing our Government Relations Committee, is putting together what we call a commissioner's breakfast. We will hold this at the Roanoke Wildwood Fire Department. We're going to invite all of the North Carolina commissioners in our 3 counties to come in, sit down, we'll feed them. We're going to help educate them again on what we're doing here at the lake, the importance of the lake to their counties and their representation for us. And I'm sure I'm probably missing something, but what's near and dear to me is the vegetation survey, which is coming up this fall. We're going to start, I'll let you say something in a minute.
So Jeff mentioned the habitat enhancement this June, which we're underway and we're in good shape. Most of you are familiar with the other big thing the LGA does from an environmental standpoint. That is the shoreline survey, 250 miles surveying for all vegetation, primarily to identify the noxious and invasive species, so you can determine what needs to be treated the following year. So this year, we're starting again a little early, August 15th, runs through 31 October. The goal is to put as many volunteers as we can to get out there on the lake, to get assigned. Those of you who are familiar understand this, those who may not have done it. They're assigned an area, 3-4 hours on the lake, use a kayak, a jet ski, a pontoon, your ski boat, whatever. You're throwing the work rate, identifying the vegetation, entering into a tablet, and what NC State works with us in order to model that and determine where vegetation, the invasive noxious is the worst, and where treatment needs to occur. So we had some handouts here, so I would just encourage everybody to take one of those, volunteer. There's a little QR code and a place where you can go to fill out a Google form. Let your neighbors know, let your friends know, let your enemies know. Everybody out there on the water to help support this. This is critical to maintaining the water quality that Jeff talked about in the vision and mission statement.
Thank you, John. In addition, in August, we're planning an evening meeting. It will be a Dutch Creek type meal. We're going to have Dominion Energy come in and talk about the shoreline management plan and the impact to us permit holders. September, we're going to have in our membership meeting both state agencies, wildlife law enforcement officers come in, speak to us, and then hopefully in October we will have the 5-county forum, sheriff's forum. If you're attending our membership meetings, you can tell that we're trying to keep you informed of the latest thing that's going on in our community. And again, these are all stakeholders. We value them, and we're going to do our best to help achieve our mission by working with them. So that concludes the business portion of today's meeting. We're going to move on now to a presentation by Mr. Carter Ricks. Carter is a native of Halifax. Is it Halifax
Yeah, Halifax.
itself, not the county?
Yeah, the town and county.
Okay. Somewhere in the county you grew up?
The town and the county, Halifax.
Oh, okay. You grew up in Halifax.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't know when he started his fascination with snakes. As a young boy, he was probably chased around the yard or something by a snake and decided to become friends.
I'll go over it.
But Carter has a bachelor's of science degree from NC State in fisheries, wildlife, and conservation biology. He's currently working on a master's degree at Western Carolina in biology, and he's taking his valuable time to come talk to us about the snakes of Lake Gaston. So, welcome, Carter.
Thank y'all very much for having me. I'd like to thank Tammy for contacting the North Carolina Herpetological Society. And I'd like to thank the Herp Society for contacting me to give this talk to y'all. Pretty much when Tammy contacted the Herp Society, they all said, "Who wants to go give that talk?" And they said, about 2 or 3 of them looked at each other and said, "Carter lives up that way, don't he?" So I gotta give him the gig. So I'm gonna give y'all a talk about the snakes of Lake Gaston and how to identify them. I'm mostly gonna focus on the 2 big ones that I know most of y'all probably care about learning about, the copperhead and the cottonmouth. But I mostly kind of want to give you all a bit of a background here. So when I think Lake Gaston, this is what I think about here. Now, I told y'all I was from Halifax, North Carolina, which is about 30 minutes away from here. But in the summertime, I spent my summers here on Lake Gaston. This right here used to be my grandparents' house. That is my great aunt's house, and that is the house of a very lovely couple from New York City. He was a retired firefighter. They might as well have been family as good as they treated him. So when I was a kid, I had run on all three of these docks. I was king of the world, y'all. I literally had free reign over all of these right here. But this is to me what Lake Gaston looked like, and probably not really much anymore, but this is what it looked like probably about 25 years ago. This was from last year when a buddy of mine allowed me to get on his pontoon boat and we drove down this boat. But I say this because spending those summers up there, we did run into snakes from time to time. And of course, when I was a kid, I didn't really get into herpetology that much until high school, really. I mean, when I was about 6, 7 years old, we were watching Steve Irwin on the TV, and I thought that was really cool that he was jumping on top of, alligators and king cobras and stuff like that. But I didn't think that was much of a career path. And I still don't. I really don't want to do that. I want to, I study salamanders for my master's thesis. They don't bite, they don't crash around, they don't poop on me. But I still do love snakes, and I love all the reptiles and amphibians, and pretty much every animal in the great state of North Carolina and Virginia. So, around this point, and I'm sure to most of y'all as well, snakes get classified in 2 different ways. Is it brown and have markings on it? Well, that's a moccasin. Is it black? That's a black snake. Is it anything else? Well, we'll somehow sort it into one of those 2 groups. But to give you all a little bit of background, North Carolina currently has 37 different native species of snakes. If you include the state of Virginia, we'll get that up to 38, and I'll go over that 38th one when we get to one that is similar to it. Of those 37 species of snakes, 6 of those species are venomous. That is the copperhead, the cottonmouth, the timber rattlesnake, the pygmy rattlesnake, the eastern diamondback rattlesnake, and the eastern coral snake. I named those off essentially in terms of how common they are. And when it comes to Lake Gaston, of those 37 species, roughly 25 could possibly occur in or around Lake Gaston. I say roughly 25. I extended it out about a county or 2 away from Lake Gaston for those that don't live directly on the lake. And ranges change from book to book. A lot of these books I've looked at are probably about 10 years old at this point, and there have been shown that a lot of these species are expanding their ranges, especially as the climate warms. And of those 25 that could live in and around Lake Gaston, only 2 of them are venomous. That is the copperhead and the cottonmouth.
Sorry, Rick, will we be able to get a copy of this?
Yes, I will be giving this to Tammy, and she will be sending that or make it available for everybody.
Thanks.
So let's just get right into the big one here. The copperhead, Agkistrodon contortrix. This is the most common venomous snake in North Carolina. It occurs in pretty much every single county in the state. The only place you really aren't going to run into these is the Outer Banks. And even then, you probably I think they're out there still. I think in some of those intertidal forests, there probably are some of these out there. These are pit vipers. They are mostly a nocturnal species. They come out at night. That's when they move around. That's when they're active. That's when they're hunting. They use the heat-seeking pits on the front of their nose, right underneath their nose here, and that allows them to see the heat signature of preys and threats. That allows them to easily be able to hunt things even in the dark. They get about, if you find a 4-foot-long copperhead, you found a very large copperhead. And most of them are usually about 3 feet long. This big one here that I found in Medoc Mountain probably about 6, 7 years ago, that was probably between 3.5 feet, and that was a monster of a copperhead. They are light gray to tan in coloring with darker brown blotches along the sides here. No other snake has this pattern like this, and this is the main way that you can tell this snake apart from any other snake species. They have Hershey kisses along their sides here, those dark brown blotches. I have seen a few that don't really have, like if you look at this guy here, some of his blotches don't exactly make Hershey Kisses, but they look almost, most of them are going to look just like that right there. And the young may have yellow on their tails. This one here just barely had a little bit of yellow on his tail. I apologize that the pictures are a little small. I wasn't sure how big the screen was going to be. The way these guys hunt is they're ambush predators. They sit still, they coil up, they'll get up against a log or against something that they think will essentially be a pathway for rodents or frogs or lizards. And they'll sit there, they'll wait till one comes by, they'll strike at it, they'll envenomate it, it will run off, and then they will follow the scent of it with their tongues. With snakes, snakes essentially have, their tongue will go out, it will collect particles from the air, and then they insert the forks of the tongue up into something called a Jacobson's organ in the top of their mouth, which then sends the signals of those scents to their brain. Also, these guys love cicadas. If any of y'all know anything, you know that this year was the year that the 13-year cicadas emerged. They're kind of dying off now. There's probably a few still remaining that are calling around. Copperheads love cicadas. You might have even seen an article online saying, the cicadas are emerging this year. That means copperheads are going to be all over the place. Not really, but they do love a good cicada. I've seen some of them even stair-step their way into bushes to eat cicadas. It's like candy to them. They love nice dry wooded areas, and they're very tolerant to human development. The lake is honestly a fantastic place for copperheads to set up and essentially love to be. They love that we have flower beds. They love that we have pine straw down. They love that we keep these little sections of woods in between the homes. And that's one thing that you really need to be careful of, especially at dawn and dusk and into the night. Just kind of keep a light on you if you're looking, if you're moving around your yard, and especially if you reach under like bushes or if you have piles of leaves and sticks and things like that. Just be careful where you put your hands and feet. I did know a couple once. The husband got bit on the hand reaching under a bush, and then a year later, after he recovered from his copperhead bite, his wife was walking across the yard in flip-flops, and she got tagged on the foot. They're both totally fine. They completely recovered. Copperheads are honestly not very aggressive snakes. You will come up on them, and they may coil up and hold their ground. They may vibrate their tail, and they may release a musk when they're threatened. A lot of snakes do this. A lot of people believe that they vibrate their tail to mimic rattlesnakes. Like if the tail vibrates a lot in the leaves, that makes kind of a rustling sound. It actually has been shown that that behavior came about before rattlesnakes, and rattlesnakes just evolved to make that behavior even more effective by having a rattle. So this is pretty much going to be the big one around the lake, essentially, for keeping your eye out on. When it comes to Lake Gaston, there's a lot of people that say that there's a few snake species that look very similar to copperheads. When it comes to Lake Gaston, I forgot about this. So I've already kind of gone over most of the big traits here. I really like this individual here, which shows off the Hershey Kiss pattern very well. Kind of a darker color on this one. This one was from the mountains of North Carolina. The main snake species that I believe around the lake y'all are going to be running into that looks very similar to a copperhead is the Decay's brown snake, Storaria decayi. These are very small snakes. They probably get just over a foot long when full grown. They're usually a very light brown color. They can be gray, and I have seen some reddish ones like this one here that I found in the mountains. And they kind of have this pale stripe running down their back, and they can have a few black spots along the side here. They love forests, they love clearings, they love flower beds, they love the edge of fields, cow pastures, anything like that, and you will often encounter them underneath cover objects or out basking in the sun. Most of the time when I run into these, it'll be on a sidewalk or on a dirt road or on like a neighborhood road, and they'll just be out on the pavement probably about an hour before sunset, and they'll just be basking on the pavement trying to get some heat. before going out to feed on slugs, earthworms, and snails. These are actually really good snakes if you have a flower bed. Everybody knows that slugs are what destroy your plants. These guys love eating slugs. Very nice to keep in your flower beds. I know that sounds weird for me to say to a lot of y'all, hey, keep a snake in your flower bed, but believe me, these guys are not going to hurt you. And to show y'all that, I actually have one of these with me. So after the presentation, I will show off the 2 snakes that I have. Other species that are very commonly mistaken for copperheads. These are the juvenile forms of what most people call black snakes. Black rat snake, Pantherophis allegheniensis, and the black racer, Coluber constrictor. Both of these snakes, before they turn black when they're adults, they have patterns when they're smaller. And essentially, as they get older, I think roughly about 2-3 years old, they turn from this grayish pattern and they turn black all over, except for a bit of white underneath the chin and a little bit down for the black rat. And sometimes black racers can have some white under the chin. But I've very often heard people call me up for both of these and say, I've got a copperhead. I literally, one time my parents killed one of these that was underneath one of our gutter guards and said, oh, we didn't have time to call you. We just thought it was a copperhead. We just went ahead and killed it. And I said, no, that was a black racer. One thing that I tell people this all the time as a trait for how to tell the venomous and the non-venomous snakes apart, and it's the eyes. If you look at these snakes here, they have circular pupils. I know.
I'm gonna take that to my wife.
Yeah. Believe me, I've had so many people that I say, well, if you look at the eyes and they have circular pupils, and the first thing they tell me is, I'm not getting close enough to look at the eyes. I don't want to be close enough to tell that these guys have essentially vertical slits for eyes, like cat eyes, essentially. So that's why I don't even have it up here. Another thing that usually gets these guys killed is that they can be pretty aggressive when they get threatened. They coil up and strike. When it comes to smaller juvenile snakes that end up getting bigger, they're very aggressive when they're smaller. These are essentially just little bite-sized treats for something like a hawk, a fox, a coyote, a possum, a skunk. When they get bigger, they get a little more calm, I've noticed, essentially. But when they're small like this, they just coil up and they just bite you like crazy. It doesn't hurt. And they'll poop all over you like crazy or musk all over you like crazy, and that's no fun. But essentially when they're that small and people see them coil up, people get really frightened, and that's another reason they get killed. So these are 2 species that a lot of people do mistake for copperheads, but I don't think you're going to find either of these much around the lake. So we have the corn snake, Pantherophis guttatus, and the mole king snake, Lamprepeltis caligaster. Both of these snakes are usually kind of orangish and reddish patterns on the back. They can be more grayish and a bit more brownish in some areas. The corn snake isn't really seen at the lake. You'll usually see them a bit more further south. This is a snake that the further south you go into, say, the Sand Hills and into southeastern North Carolina, that's when you're going to be running into this snake more often. The mole king snake does occur around here, and I have seen people find them. But this is probably one of the most secretive snakes in the entire southeast. Despite the fact that this gets about 3-4 feet long, they stay underground a lot, and not a whole lot of people end up running into them. The only one I've ever seen around here was in Roanoke Rapids. Somebody killed it while they were weed whacking and thought it was a copperhead. And I was distraught for about 3 days there after I saw the photo on Facebook. My mom showed it to me. Because I've never seen one of these full grown, which is why it's from a buddy of mine, why that photo's from a buddy of mine. So now we move on to cottonmouth / the water moccasin, Agkistrodon piscivorus. This occurs in the coastal plain and the eastern Piedmont of North Carolina. We used to be able to say that the fall line was the cutoff for this species, usually where the coastal plain meets the Piedmont. However, within the past few decades, this species has essentially came into eastern Wake County. A lot of ranges show that this species does occur in and around Lake Gaston. I'm not entirely sure if these occur much on the lake proper. I wouldn't doubt that some of these coves back in the lake and some of the swamps that are around the lake absolutely do have these. I don't think I've ever actually seen one of these properly on the lake itself though, but I wouldn't doubt it, especially this day and time. Again, this is a nocturnal pit viper. It is much more aquatic than the copperhead. The copperhead is going to be the one that you're going to see in your woods and around your house. This is the one that if you're going to see it anywhere, it's going to be near the water. These get a lot longer than the copperhead. They can get about 5 feet long at max, and again, that is a very big cottonmouth if it is 5 feet long. The young can be reddish brown with patterning and can have some yellow on their tails. This is a young one right here. And they often darken with age. Some of them that I've seen just completely lose a bit of the bands and are just a solid snake, solid colored dark, like a chocolate brown or black snake. But this large, robust body that's very thick, no other snake is going to have that. They're pretty much, if they're 5 feet long, they're about as big around as my arm, essentially. Yeah, I figured I'd get groans from that. They prey on fish, frogs, rodents, and other snakes. I've seen one of these that had a black racer that was about as long as he was in his mouth, and they were essentially fighting over over if the cottonmouth could subdue the black racer or if the black racer could get away. One of the main things that you can tell them apart is their face mask. No other species of snake, especially ones you see along the water, are going to have this dark stripe that goes through the eye and then this kind of lighter color that's along the top lip here. You'll also notice that I'm not really mentioning the head shape when it comes to these snakes. I'm sure a lot of y'all have heard if it has a diamond-shaped head, it's a venomous species of snake. Not really. A lot of our water snakes will flatten their heads out into a diamond shape because before humans came along, if a predator came along and you flattened your head out into a diamond shape, you know, the possum or the skunk or the coyote that comes up on you goes, oh, that's a cottonmouth. I shouldn't mess with that. Humans came along and they went, oh, that's a cottonmouth. Let me go get the garden hoe. As I mentioned, these are mostly aquatic species. They like slow-moving water, swamps, canals, slow-moving rivers like the Roanoke. Occasionally, I wouldn't doubt you would find these up some of those more undeveloped coves that have a lot of the grass and things like that in them. They can be on land. They'll occasionally move across land if they want to move from one water source to another. It's like, say, if a pond dries up or a canal or swamp dries up, they'll move across land to try and get somewhere else. And of course, they will flash that trademark white inside their mouth when they're threatened, like this one is doing here to me. And they will musk when they're picked up or if they feel too threatened. I've never picked one up with my bare hands. I picked one up with snake tongs before. And he essentially took his tail and he sprayed me like a sprinkler with musk from his back end. Not very pleasant, but oh well. I chose this hobby. So again, I really like this picture here. It really shows off those bands. Really shows off just how much of a robust snake this is. Nice big show here of the face mask. And this is one essentially that is, again, these are not aggressive snakes. They're not trying to chase me down. They're not trying to bite me. This is literally a snake that I have cornered, and his only way of trying to get out is threaten the big scary thing that he thinks is going to eat it. That's what we are to them. We're predators to them. They don't look at us as a food source or like something, it'd be really funny if I were to, go harass these people. They look at us as something scary. They're more scared of us than we are of them. And believe me, I mean that. Even some of y'all that are like terrified of snakes. So, when it comes to these guys, the thing that is going to look the most like a cottonmouth on Lake Gaston is the northern water snake, Herodiacyphodon. This is the most common aquatic snake in North Carolina. You can pretty much find these just about anywhere. 4 foot long is the max for these guys. They can be a lot of different colors. I'm glad that I got this picture here from Yates Mill Pond in Wake County. We have this nice reddish individual here, and then I believe this is a big female. She's got this gray colored individual here right beside of her. And then I have this individual here from the mountains of Virginia that's a bit more brownish. The front section of their body is cross-banded. These individuals here are more of a show for that. And then the bands break up into alternating blotches. As you kind of see here as I go down the body of this individual here, the bands kind of become a top one, a bottom one, a top one, a bottom one as you go along the body here. And that is very characteristic of the northern water snake. These are active at both day and night. It pretty much depends on what the temperature and the weather conditions are, whether these come out during the day and feed, or whether they come out at night and prowl around the water looking for mostly fish and amphibians, but they will eat mice, they will eat small birds. Snakes are opportunistic feeders. If the opportunity presents itself and they're hungry enough, they will pretty much go after anything that they think that they can swallow. And they also have to take the risk. They also pretty much assess, okay, if I go after this thing, will it hurt me? And how hungry am I? So as the risk goes up, the chance of eating goes down. But as hunger goes up, the willingness to take risks goes up as well. These will bite and musk readily when threatened. This is a species that when I see them, I don't even bother grabbing them anymore. This is a species that when you grab it, will just bite, 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 bite. Your arm will be bloody by the time you get through with it, and they will smear their poop all over you with their tails. It's not a very pleasant experience. They're very common. I don't bother messing with them anymore. Again, a variety of aquatic habitats. I mostly see these in rivers and lakes, very readily found on like the Roanoke or Lake Gaston. Not so much in a swamp environment. They seem to like a lot of areas that have more riprap and rocks and cover that they can hide along on the banks. Other species that are commonly mistaken for cottonmouths, these are two that would be more further away from the lake, about a county or so away, would be the brown water snake, Nerodia taxus-pilota, and the red-bellied water snake, Nerodia erythrogaster. These are both pretty common water snakes. Brown water snakes really like rivers. These are pretty much all over the Roanoke, the Tar River, pretty much any of the larger bodies of moving water around here. Red-bellied water snakes are more your swamps and your ponds. They like slower moving water. Most of these, you'd probably mistake this for a cottonmouth. I don't know how you'd see that reddish orangish belly and mistake that for a cottonmouth, but I've seen people do it. Neither of these are robust as cottonmouths. They're not as thick. Even a big red-bellied water snake like this just does not have that chunkiness to it that a cottonmouth has.
How long do those get?
This one gets probably about 5 feet long. This one probably about 4. And if you find a 4-footer, you've done something.
Are they both venomous?
No, none of these are venomous.
None of them.
Only the copperhead and the cottonmouth are venomous. These also lack banding across the entire body, and they don't have the mask on their face like the cottonmouth does. So now I'm just kind of going to go over the other 25 snakes that all... I can speed run this if you want me to, but I'm not going to kind of go over... I'm going to mostly hit the ones that I think y'all would run into. And of course, everybody knows the black snakes. Everybody has heard about the black snakes, ran into the black snakes. We have the black rat snake, Panthropus alleghaniensis, the eastern king snake, Lampreypeltis scatula, and the black racer, Colubra constrictor. We'll go over them one at a time here. The black rat snake is 7 foot long. It has some white underneath the chin here. It can have some patterning, as I showed y'all with the younger individual earlier. Some of that patterning can stay into adulthood. If you ever find a snake way up a tree, or if you find a snake that's like crawling up a brick wall or something like that, it's one of these. No other snake that we have has the ability to climb straight up a surface like a black rat snake does. And that's because unlike the rest of these that have cylindrical bodies, black rat snakes have bodies that are essentially shaped like a loaf of bread. It's curved on top and then it's flat on the bottom. So those scales that are on the bottom have the ability to essentially adhere to surfaces and allow them to climb straight up a tree, straight up a brick wall, things like that. These are constrictors, and they will eat mostly rodents, which is how they got their name. You will occasionally find them in birdhouses, eating eggs and things like that. Many a times I've had to get them out of bluebird houses for some of my family members. But they will eat most anything else. A lot of people call these chicken snakes in some areas. I haven't heard that much around here. That's more of like a southeastern North Carolina thing. And down there, they're actually a yellowish color. It's the same species, but they're more yellow down in southeastern North Carolina and further south. I'm gonna move over here to this one for right now, the black racer, because these two are the ones that are most confused with each other. These get about 5 feet long. This is the snake you're gonna see on a hot day. If it's 90 degrees out and it's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon and it's hot and muggy and you are like, how can anything move around on this day? How can anything stand this heat? And right along the edge of your woods, you'll see one of these cruising along. I don't know how they do it because they're solid black and that conducts heat. These guys love hot days. They're like the only snake that is active when it's upper 80s, upper 80s, low 90s, into those really hot, muggy summer days. There have been days I've hiked around, and that's all I see is just black racers. They will sometimes have white on their chin. This individual has a bit of white on his chin, but I've seen some that don't. They have a mostly black belly from about here down on some individuals. This one has a bit of a pink snout. I got a better picture here in a second. And these have a completely wrong scientific name because they do not constrict. Constrictor my foot. They chase down and subdue prey. They pretty much grab it and they will kind of just thrash around with it until they subdue it enough to the point that they can swallow it. And they'll eat just about anything. With a lot of these snakes, like this is a rat snake, rats may be a main part of their diet, but like I said, they're opportunistic feeders. If a fish is half dead on the side of a bank and a black rat snake comes up on it, he's not going to pass up that opportunity to eat it. Then we have the eastern king snake, African scatula, get about 5 feet long. These have white yellowish bands or bars down their body. I have seen some that vary. In the Outer Banks, these have more of like a speckling of white along them, and they're called chain king snakes, though most people I know around here know this as the chain snake. I have heard some older individuals call them that. Again, these are constrictors. They have a very wide diet, but that also does include venomous snake species. These are the ones that, you know, you've always heard, keep them around because they eat the copperheads and the cottonmouths and the rattlesnakes and things like that. But they will eat pretty much anything that can fit into their mouths. So I love this little comic book here by Bird and Moon Comics that shows the difference between racers and rat snakes. And I'm glad that they did this because I didn't have to kind of explain this here about the scales. Again, with the eyes, none of y'all are going to get close enough to see the difference between the scales. But essentially, the racers have smooth scales. When you feel them, your finger just kind of glides down them. The eastern rat snake has ridged scales or keeled scales, essentially. Body is not speckled. These are very fast snakes. Racer is an absolutely apt term for these snakes because I ran after them before and could not catch them. These guys, the eastern rat snake on the other hand is often more white down the body here. They can have white speckles, again, from the pattern from their youth hanging on. The belly can be checkered. You can often find these guys, eastern rat snakes, also, a lot of people find them when they're basking. They will do something called kinking, which is where they essentially kink up their body all the way down, and you'll find them kind of laid out in a straight line. We don't know exactly why they do this. No other snake does this except for the corn snake, which is a very close relative of the eastern rat snake. We think they might be due to potentially absorbing more heat from the ground. We think it might be that it breaks up their pattern amongst like the leaves and things so that things like hawks and owls can't really see them that well from above. We're not entirely sure. And then of course, just for the humor, the racers kind of just always have this scowl on their face. They look pretty like they're lost in thought. They're an evil genius. The rat snakes just have this big, wide, kind of dopey expression on their face. They just kind of are just always really wide-eyed, and they almost look like they're kind of smiling at you, essentially. Of course, I've told that to people before, like, you think a snake is smiling? At me. Exactly. So, we now move on to the eastern hognose snake, Heterodon platyrhinos. This is another species that I debated whether or not to put this in with the copperhead mimics, because we have this color phase here. This is a very vibrant, gorgeous individual that my buddy Thomas saw. Most of them are not going to be orange colored like that. They're going to be just more of a tannish color with the black speckling down the backs. Most of the individuals I've seen around here are the solid black phase. They are more of like a smaller, robust snake species. They have this upturned snout on the front of their face, which is how they got their name. They're toad specialists. They are rear-fanged, and essentially what they do is they eat a toad, and what toads do when they're threatened is they puff up with air. The back fangs of the eastern hognose snake are specialized to pop toads, so that they can more easily put them into their mouths and eat them. If you've ever heard of one of these, my grandpa used to call these puff adders or spread adders. And they got that name because when you come up on them, they'll spread out their head, that nice flat kind of hood that they have there. They'll hiss very loudly, and I've even had some that feign striking at me when threatened. They don't really like open their mouths and strike, but they just kind of go. They just kind of swing their head at you, and they pretend that they're biting you. I don't know what that does, but anyway. And occasionally, you'll have some that'll do this readily, but a lot of the ones I've came up on don't. They just kind of hold their ground. They will roll over and play dead. I'm sure y'all have seen the videos of the snake that rolls over and plays dead and squirms all over the place and opens its mouth. And they'll release a very foul-smelling musk while they do that. Some will even burst the capillaries in their mouth so that there's some blood coming out of their mouths, and you'll especially think they're dead. What is especially hilarious is that if you see one of these do this, stand about from me to those chairs over there from them and watch them, and you'll watch them, they'll just kind of flip their head back over, and they'll look at you, and they'll go, "Are you gone yet? Are you gone yet? Do you still think I'm dead?" And if you come back over to them, they'll flip back over dead. They're not very good actors. These are mildly venomous. Now, don't freak out when I say mildly venomous, because people rarely get bit by these, and even when you do get bit, it kind of just causes a little bit of swelling at the bite spot. And I've only heard of one person that got bit by, not even bit, he was handling one of these that was turned over dead. He was handling near the head, and the head kind of jerked a little bit, and one of the teeth just kind of caught him on the thumb, and his thumb swelled up for a few days. Totally fine. The garden snakes. I've heard so many people call these garden snakes before, but they are actually the eastern garter snake, Thamnophis sirtalis, and we have the eastern ribbon snake, Thamnophis saurus, two very closely related species. They are called garter snakes because apparently way back in the olden times, this checkered pattern here resembled the garters that women would wear. They would have a checker pattern very similar to that. Both of these can get about 3 feet long, usually a black-brown color with, like I said, the checkerboard cat pattern. They usually have a white stripe down the spine. This one's got a bit more of a dark brownish one. And occasionally garter snakes can be a bit more reddish in color. I've seen that more toward the coast. Or bluish in color. I've seen that more floral, usually has the more bluish ones. Diurnal, but I'd also probably call them corpuscular, which is a term that means that they are active mostly at dawn and dusk. And they both can kind of tolerate cooler temperatures than most other species. This is a species that usually right about springtime, when it starts getting about 60 degrees, the sun's out, this is usually the first species that comes up out of the ground and starts basking. They can tolerate a bit cooler temperatures, and that's very appropriate because this is a species that gets even up into Canada. So they really do have the ability to tolerate a bit cooler temperatures. Both of these mostly will eat frogs and salamanders, especially the ribbon snake. Garters are known to have a bit more wide of a diet. They'll eat insects, they'll eat rodents. Ribbon snakes are usually a bit more slender, as you can see here in this photo. The main thing that defines these two apart from each other is that, because I have seen garter snakes that look very similar to ribbon snakes, and I've seen ribbon snakes that look very similar to garter snakes, especially this one here that has this patterning on the side. Most ribbon snakes you see kind of won't have the patterning. And the main thing is that they have this really white scale, the ribbon snake does, right in front of the eyeball there. Again, I doubt any of y'all are going to get close enough to see that, but just in case. Again, these are both very harmless species. The small fossorial snakes. So these are the ones that if you're rooting around in your flower bed, if you flip over a log in the woods or a rock, or you might be out walking along the road or in your driveway, and one of these might be out basking. There's a bunch of these: the rough earth snake, the smooth earth snake, the southeastern crown snake, the eastern worm snake, the red belly snake, and the ringneck snake. I put them all here because they all kind of live in very similar habitats. They all get a little over a foot long max. They all eat essentially small insects. Ones you're probably mostly going to see around the lake are going to be these three along the bottom here: the worm snake, the red belly snake, and the ringneck. I wouldn't doubt that you'd see a rough earth snake around here. These two are probably, you probably could see one of these around here. This one's going to be a little further south. For the most part, these are all absolutely harmless. These are actually really great snakes to, if you ever want to get over your fear of snakes, to hold. The decay snake falls into this category as well. I just put him out on his own because with the patterning on his back, lots of people mistake them for copperheads. They mostly stay underground. You might see them out at night. And really good to have around. They eat slugs, they eat earthworms. Some of them do eat termites. Just nice little snakes to have around and see and run into occasionally. The coral snake mimics. These two, if you run into one of these around here, please tell me, because these are so rare around Lake Gaston. We have the scarlet king snake, Nitropeltis elapsoides, and the scarlet snake, Semophora coccinea. You all know the old mnemonic: red touch black, friend of Jack; red touch yellow, kill a fellow; or red touch black, venom black. I've heard that one a lot more recently. With a lot of these, white replaces yellow. These are both, like I said, very rare. These prefer sandy, kind of more longleaf pine scrub oak areas. These are more what you're going to find around southeastern North Carolina, Sand Hills, the Wilmington area, and then further south from there. The bands on the scarlet king go all the way around. The bands on the scarlet snake do not, as you can see here. The scarlet snakes actually have pointed noses. They really like moving through the sand and staying underground. They are mostly reptile egg eaters, mostly of lizards. And just as a reminder, we don't have coral snakes anywhere near Lake Gaston, or at least we don't anymore. We probably haven't in at least a century. We might have way back in colonial times when we had longleaf pine savanna that was pretty much across the entirety of the state of North Carolina, but with agriculture, the cutting down of a lot of longleaf pines back then for tar and pitch for ships, we've pretty much put the longleaf pine ecosystem down to, I believe it's 2% of its historical range in the southeast. And these species have kind of suffered due to a result of that, as has the coral snake. The coral snake is pretty much one of the rarest snakes in North Carolina. It used to be we only turned up one a year in like the most extreme southeastern part of North Carolina.
So which ones are the venomous ones?
The coral snake. Neither of these are venomous.
Either.
Neither one.
Oh.
Nothing I'm covering at this point is venomous.
Okay.
So we have two more aquatic species of snake. We have the queen snake, Regina septemvitata, and the eastern mud snake, Ferencia abacura. The queen snake, it's about 2.5 feet long max, gray-brown back with a tan belly, 3 dark stripes down the back, occasionally, not really on this one here. These are found more in rocky streams and small rivers because these are crayfish specialists. These species is essentially honed in on eating crayfish that just molted their shells and are still soft all over. Whenever a crayfish molts, it releases a scent, and this snake just goes crazy for that scent and goes after it and tries to get hold of that crayfish before it hardens up again. Probably won't find a lot of these around the lake, but if you're in any of the surrounding areas and you live near like a small rocky stream or a small little creek that may have some crayfish in it, it's a possibility you could run into one of these. And then we have the eastern mud snake. This is probably one of the most secretive snakes in North Carolina. 5 feet max, but if you find one that big, again, you're really doing something. They're black on top with yellow around the face and then pink down the body. These are just gorgeous snakes. They're iridescent. They shine like rainbows if you have them in the light. They're absolutely beautiful. You find these mostly in areas with dense aquatic vegetation, swamps, marshes, Carolina bays, etc. They're almost fully aquatic. only ever seen 2 on land, and I got lucky just driving down the road, and they happened to be right there on the road in front of me, moving between bodies of water. One of the big reasons that these guys are so hard to find is because they have a very specific diet of sirens and amphiumas. Now, if you don't know what a siren and an amphiuma is, that is an aquatic species of salamander that looks just like an eel. And they live in these swamps, marshes, Carolina bays, in those dense vegetations. These guys love them and they eat them right up. These are called hoop snakes in Native American legend because the Native Americans thought that they would bite their tails and form a hoop and then roll down hills. I don't know how they came to that conclusion. I don't even know how they saw these snakes, considering they're in the water most of the time, but hey, I wasn't around back then. This is a personal favorite of mine, and this is a snake that looks nothing like anything else that we have. This is the rough green snake, Ophiodries aestivus, 3 feet long for max. They have a green, slender body with yellow sides and a white belly. They're mostly arboreal. These guys are going to prefer dense vegetation. So if you have shrubs, if you have some vines that are tangled up in those shrubs, these guys love that, especially if it's near water. These guys mostly eat insects. They will occasionally take a small tree frog. They're diurnal. They're active mostly during the day, and they will coil up on limbs at night, like this one's doing right here, right around sunset. You can occasionally find them on the ground or crossing roads during the mating season in the spring and the fall when they're trying to find other mates. I do have one of these with me today, so we'll be able to look at one of these. And that's pretty much all the snakes. I didn't really have the ability to put the green snake with anything. But what should you do if you encounter a snake? Yeah, that works too. But the first thing you should do is don't touch it, especially if you can't immediately identify it. Do not touch snakes if you do not know what you're looking at. I've heard so many people say things like, if you have the ability to look at this snake and you have to sit there and go, all right, does it have Hershey kisses on the side? Is that a triangular head or is it flattening the head out? Is that robust? If you're having to sit there and like run through your mind what the snake looks like and what species it is, don't touch it. Just leave it alone. You don't want to make that mistake and get bit. If you or the snake are not in immediate danger, leave it alone, please. Now, I say you as if you were like, I don't know, cornered by a snake. I don't know how you'd ever be cornered by a snake. If the snake is in immediate danger, more applies to me because I'm going to stop and move it off the road if it's going to get hit by a car or something like that. Or believe me, if any of y'all ever have a problem with a snake, you're more than welcome to call me and I'll come get it. But just leave the snake alone if you can.
Put him on speed dial.
Yeah. If you have to move the snake, if you got to move it, you can do like my grandma does. Take a broom and sweep it. My grandma gets black rat snakes in her garage all the time now. And because of me, who's told her that they're not going to hurt her, she literally just takes her broom and she just sweeps him out of the garage and he just goes on his way. If you can't, just sweep him out a door or out the garage, put him in a bucket or a trash can, and then release it. If it's in the yard in a spot where you just don't want it to be, spray it with a water hose. It's not going to hurt the snake, it'll agitate it, it really won't like it, but it will probably move if you spray it with a water hose. And if all else fails, call a professional. I wouldn't call myself a professional, but you're more than welcome to call me that. If you have to have somebody remove it. But the big thing is, why are snakes important? Why do we not need to get the garden hoe or the machete or the 12-gauge shotgun every single time we see a snake moving across our yard? They're natural pest control. Snakes don't really spread diseases. Mice and ticks do. As I like to say, I like these guys being around because they eat the things that bite me and spread diseases to me. It has been shown that a black rat snake is 3 times more effective than a barn cat at controlling mice populations. When it comes to ticks, where do ticks stay most of the time when they're not on humans? Rats, mice, moles, voles. That is where a lot of the ticks start off as young, That's where they mature, and then they move on to biting us as they get older. It has been shown that a single timber rattlesnake eats 2,500 ticks a year. Now imagine that with any other species of snake that's eating rodents. That's a lot of ticks that are taken out. That's a lot of ticks that aren't biting you and me and giving us Lyme disease or Rocky Mountain spotted fever or ehrlichiosis or any of the other diseases that we have around here. That's a lot of snakes. That's a lot of mice that aren't getting into your house and into your cupboard and potentially spreading diseases or fleas or anything like that. And they're food for other animals that we really like. They're a big source of food for birds of prey, our hawks and owls, the mesocarnivores, your foxes, your skunks, your opossums, your coyotes. Large fish, I've seen bass that have just gulped down a water snake that was going across the water. They'll eat them. These guys are a big part of the food chain, and they're a big step between getting to these smaller rodents and getting up to higher species. And they have their medical uses. Copperhead venom is a key component of most breast cancer medications. And as somebody whose grandma suffered from breast cancer, I'm really thankful for that. As are many other sorts of medications that are made from different sorts of snake venom. Now, I mostly wanted to dispel a few snake myths here because I've heard some of these from time to time. The big one that I've heard from 3-4 different people. There's rattlesnakes up on Lake Gaston. I know back on them islands where there ain't nobody on and there's still trees, back up in them coves where there ain't nobody, there's rattlesnakes back up in there. I done seen them. No rattlesnakes have been reported in more than a century or more in or around Lake Gaston. The timber rattlesnake was essentially extirpated from the majority of the Piedmont of North Carolina. You will find the species on the coastal plain, which most people call canebrake rattlesnakes, and you will find them in the mountains, usually off in your very extreme wilderness. These are species that do not like being around humans. Now, there are still a few pockets of them in the Piedmont. I think some of the state parks do have pockets of timber rattlesnakes that are completely just walled off from every other population around them. So if there was one up there, I'd sure be excited to know about it, and please tell me about it because man, they sure are being secretive. I've already went over this one. If a snake has a diamond-shaped head, it is venomous. No. Many non-venomous species of snakes flare their heads out when threatened, like this banded water snake here. He's pretty much not very happy with me having gotten out of my car and stopped him from getting across that dirt road. He has flared his head out there to look like he is a venomous species of snake and hopefully run me away. He didn't. I picked him up, but that's me. I'm a special case in this room. A snake chased me. I've heard this one a lot, especially when it comes to like black snakes. That snake in that yard chased me. Snakes don't chase people. Like I said, they see us as predators. You may happen to be between the snake and the hole it wants to go down, or the big pile of sticks, or the tree that it wants to go up. And they might, head in the direction of you, but they're not trying to chase you. They're trying to get away. They have no ill will toward you except for the fact that they think you're going to eat them.
Are snakes more likely to leave if they sense that you're coming or you're there?
Yes. Sometimes they will just kind of stay put because they're like, I don't move, he won't see me. You know how people used to say that, you ever seen the movie Jurassic Park, T-Rexes are solely sight predators? If you stand still, they won't sense you. A lot of snakes go by that rule. They think, if I stay put, I don't move, maybe he won't see me. Usually we do, but anyway. And then this one I've heard occasionally. If a rattlesnake or a copperhead is within striking distance, you'll smell cucumbers. I've heard this one. I've heard this one recently. I had an uncle that told me this. He told me he was hiking along a trail. He happened to smell cucumbers in the air. He'd heard about it, and he looked around, and a log that he just walked over had a copperhead coiled up underneath it. Now, I've never been able to verify this. And I don't run into timber rattlesnakes that much anymore. I did when I was at Western Carolina. They were at a lot of my field sites. And I don't run into copperheads all that often at my house. However, in preparing for this talk, I went out Thursday evening to try and look for snakes to bring for y'all, and I ran into a copperhead. And I got literally about from me to that cable to him. I had my snake hook. He was underneath one of my big boards that I have out in the woods to attract snakes, because I'm like that. And I didn't want to put the board down on top of him and potentially squish him. So I took my hook and I prodded at him until he moved away out from under the board. I put this big heavy wooden board back down, and then I went back to him and I tried to hook him and put him back under the board. And that took me about 10 minutes. And it probably took about 6-7 minutes of me prodding that snake before it actually bit my hook. And it bit my hook a few times, but hey, I'd agitated the absolute mess out of that snake at that point. I'd probably be biting whatever was poking me multiple times too. But I never smelled cucumbers. Ever. I've never smelled cucumbers around these. I can't say that people are wrong if they smell cucumbers around any of these, because I never have. I looked it up. Most people say this is not a thing, but I have heard it. So if y'all smell cucumbers when you get around copperheads and timber rattlesnakes, more power to you. Just some references, some books that I used for making this presentation. Most of what I used for this was this book here, A Guide to the Snakes of North Carolina by Mike Dorcas out of Davidson College. Really nice little book just to have around, has most of your basic info. The Amphibians and Reptiles of the Carolinas and Virginia by Bean, Braswell, Mitchell, Palmer, and Harrison III. I've talked to Jeff Bean a few times. He's pretty much the go-to guy for any sort of reptile or amphibian in North Carolina. He says this book needs some updating. It came out in 2011. A lot of the names are a little out of date at this point. And then The Snakes of Eastern United States by Whit Gibbons. This is a much more extensive guide and covers everything essentially from the Midwest back to us. Great book. Whit Gibbons is a great guy who is a wealth of knowledge. I essentially call him the godfather of Southeastern herpetology. And he's one of the nicest people I've ever met. So, with that, do we have any other questions?
So, we have a in the afternoon, in the summertime, 4 o'clock, we go out, 15 or 20 of us go floating in the lake. What do you do if one comes off the shoreline and...
Don't mess with it. If it comes at you, just let it swim right by you. Don't swat at it. Don't kick and paddle away really quickly because you might freak it out. Just let it go on by. I have many a time been fishing in the Roanoke and had water snakes come by, and they don't really mess with you. I've even had this copperhead right here, actually. I had a really nice encounter with in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Yeah, I know, a nice encounter with a cottonmouth. This cottonmouth here, I literally watched him for about an hour. He literally slithered right up to me, and the only time he showed any signs of being afraid of me was because I moved a little too quickly, and when I did, he took off back down into the pond. I literally watched him slither around. I was probably about from here to, again, that orange cable right there from him, taking pictures with my camera. These are not aggressive animals. These are animals that are only acting out of fear towards us as to why they bite. And they don't even want to bite because venom is very energy intensive to make. Venom is a very precious resource. They don't want to waste it biting us. They want to use it so they can subdue prey and eat. If they bite us and they envenomate us, that means they have to wait quite a few days before they can restock the venom in their venom sacs. And they can't hunt in that time period. They can't catch food if they have no venom. So a lot of these species, they're not trying to hurt us. They just literally want to live just like the rest of us do, essentially. Yes, sir.
Is it true that quote-unquote baby snakes release more venom than an adult?
Yeah, I probably should have covered that myth. So from the way I understand it, it is not true that they release more venom because they're smaller, so they don't have the amount of venom. The way I had it explained to me was that because they're smaller and younger and less experienced, when they bite something, they just put all of their venom into it. These snakes, when they're big adults, they have the ability to control whether they envenomate you or not. They have the ability to give you what's called a dry bite. Essentially just a bite that is just a warning. I bit you, you know I can bite you. I'm not gonna waste my venom on you because I'd really like to eat this week. But even then, they can envenomate you with only certain amounts of venom. Essentially, baby snakes, they say that they're more dangerous because they don't understand the concept of how to give a dry bite. So they will bite you, they'll just unload all their venom on you, and that's that, essentially. But is it more deadly? I wouldn't say that because it's a smaller animal that has less venom in it. So even if he's unloading all of it, a small cottonmouth that's only like a foot long doesn't have as much venom as this 4-foot individual here. Yes, sir?
Is it true that snakes won't bite you underwater?
I actually was just talking with her about this. That was considered not true for the longest time. We knew snakes could bite underwater because they'll eat things like fish and frogs and things like that. We knew they had the ability to bite underwater. We did not know if they could envenomate people underwater. And actually, Mr. Whit Gibbons here, his grandson, who is essentially a herping prodigy, about 2 years ago, he was walking through a swamp, bare feet, because he's essentially Tarzan. He was walking through a swamp, bare feet. He saw a cottonmouth on a log, and he went to go look at it and take pictures of it. The cottonmouth bailed into the water and went underwater. He said, all right, I'm not going to go after that cottonmouth. His buddies up on the bank said, hey, your dad's here, it's time to leave. So he started walking back. And as he walked back, he thought he stepped on top of a stick. He felt a light pain in the side of his shin, and he thought like, oh, I just stepped on the stick and like a branch kind of just rolled over and rubbed up against me. I've had that happen to me before, walking around in my waders and boots and stuff like that. And he got back to the car and his legs started swelling up. He had stepped on top of that cottonmouth and it had bit him underwater. And that is the first recorded instance of that ever happening. He got put in a scientific journal because of that bite. There was a note in a scientific journal because of that bite. And
Do not try this at home.
no, do not try getting bit by snakes underwater at home. I talked to his dad one time, and his dad said that was the most expensive journal entry they've ever had. And, very expensive. Snake antivenom is not cheap, and it does not keep very long. So that's a big reason why I don't free handle anything like these. I don't just grab them with my bare hands. I have tongs, I have a hook. I will free handle anything non-venomous. They can bite me all day long, and it's like getting briar scratches. It'll look bad because most snakes have an anticoagulant in their spit. So when they bite you, it'll bleed a whole lot. You wash it off, it's like getting scratched by briars, essentially. But yes, to answer your question, they can bite underwater and they can envenomate. The cottonmouth can envenomate underwater. Yes, ma'am.
If you've got a hole in your ground, your yard,
Mm-hmm.
that's probably 30 feet from the shoreline.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about this big around, could that be a snake hole?
Potentially. I couldn't tell you. I mean, snakes don't dig holes. Snakes use holes from like rodents and muskrats and things like that, but a snake could potentially live down in there. Yes, sir.
Is it true that a cottonmouth versus a water snake, when it's in the water, more of the body of a cottonmouth is on the surface or closer to the surface?
I have seen that, and I have seen cottonmouths that when they're on the water, go back here to the cottonmouth picture because that was a good showing of, there we go. Yeah, so essentially, when a cottonmouth is in the water like this, you do mostly see most of the body above the water. And when you see a water snake, most of what you're going to see for the water snake is just the head sticking up. And you might see the slight undulations of the body, but you won't see much of the body sticking up out of the water. Now, I have seen some cottonmouths, like I said, they have the ability to submerge under the water. But for the most part, that is true. Yes?
Do all the hospitals in the area have the antivenom?
They do have the antivenom. The antivenom is crofab, and essentially, the way it works is that all of these, both the copperhead, the cottonmouth, and all of our rattlesnakes, all have very similar venom. It's all made up of the same proteins, essentially. So one type of antivenom works for all of their bites, essentially. And all of our local hospitals, I know Vite North of Roanoke Rapids does carry the antivenom. They don't carry much of it because not many people get bit by snakes anymore. And even then, when it comes to copperhead and cottonmouth bites, you don't really need antivenom for most of them, especially when it comes to copperheads. Copperheads actually don't have that powerful of a venom compared to a lot of our other North American snakes, like our rattlesnakes and things like that. Cottonmouths have a bit stronger venom, but copperheads essentially, when you get bit by one of these, they more just tend to the trauma. The venom is hemotoxic, so it destroys tissue. And they'll essentially try to deal more with just dealing with the after effects of the venom than trying to give you crofab unless you have a really bad bite. Because crofab is very expensive because it does not last very long in storage. It only lasts about 3-4 months, then you gotta throw it out.
So what do you do on the way to the hospital?
If you get bitten by a venomous snake, call 911 and remain calm and get to the hospital as quickly as possible. Do not suck at the bite wound. Do not cut anywhere above the bite wound. Don't try and bloodlet. Don't use tourniquets to try and restrict blood flow. You will make it worse. Call 911 or get rushed to the hospital as quickly as possible. Stay calm. If you can, elevate it above your heart just so it doesn't move as much venom further up or down, or put it below your heart, I think it is. Below your heart, you're right. My mother, who's a nurse, and my dad, who's an EMT, would be ashamed. And essentially, just get to the hospital as quickly as possible. Yes, ma'am?
You might want to comment about a dog that gets bit by a copperhead too, because
Dogs that get bit, essentially the same thing. Get them to the vet as quickly as possible. They suffer a little differently than we do. They mostly get we get a lot of swelling in the bite wound areas. Dogs do too, but they don't really, you just pretty much need to go to the vet essentially as quickly as possible. There's nothing really you can do for a snake bite besides just get to the doctor, please, very quickly.
Yeah, we had a dog that was bit by one, and we weren't sure what it was bit by because it happened at nighttime. And he was bit kind of in the neck area. We didn't know if it was a snake or a spider or what, but it swole really bad, and I was concerned about breathing issues and called me to do that. And we took it, and she said it was a snake bite, and she said we don't give it antivenom, but it's very painful for the dog, and he was dehydrated, so they treated him for pain and dehydration and just said watch it. And the wound may need to be debrided later on because it kills the flesh.
Yep.
He didn't have that problem, but it's apparently a very painful bite.
Oh yeah, it's very painful. Anyone that I've heard that's been bitten by one of these says it is not fun. When I told you all about the couple that got bit by these, the husband that was bit on the hand was a dentist. So he didn't really have the ability to do much dental work while he was recovering from his snake bite because he didn't have full motion in his hand for about a year afterward. Yes, sir.
I've heard they use several amps of antivenom, more than one amp.
Oh yeah, Yeah, you have to get a lot if you require antivenom, and antivenom is, I'll just go ahead and tell you all now, antivenom is not cheap, and a lot of insurances don't cover it. So, don't get bit by venomous snakes. Make it help. Yes, sir.
So in general, if a snake is swimming on top of the water, venomous?
I hate to use generalizations because every single time I've thought something was absolutely 100% definitive with a snake, I get proven wrong. There's that one snake that's out there that'll prove me wrong, and I'll run up on it and it'll just completely change my view, because these animals have personalities, they have the ability to think for themselves, and sometimes they might just do something a little out of the ordinary. As a rule, I would go by that rule. If it swims on top of the water, it probably, and it has, like I said, if you see all those traits, if you see the big, robust body, if you see the mask, if you see the bands that go all the way around, it's probably a cottonmouth. And if you see it and it's more just the head sticking up, you're only kind of really seeing the tail undulate near the back end, that probably is just one of the water snakes that is non-venomous. I would use that as a generalization, yes.
Are there any snakes that in North Carolina that do not give a warning before they bite?
That don't give a warning before they bite you. For the most part, no. Most of ours, unless you really sneak up on it and you don't see it coming, most of them probably are going to coil up like these copperheads are here. They will rattle their tail. Cottonmouths will do that too. Cottonmouths, open the mouth, they vibrate the tail. Anytime I've ever seen one of these strike at me, I had to essentially agitate the snake to bite me, or to bite at me. I've never been bitten by a venomous, thank goodness. But I essentially had to agitate them into doing that. Say, like I told you when I had the little cottonmouth that I grabbed up in my tongs, and I literally held him up, and he sprayed me with musk, and he bit my tongs a whole bunch. I probably would bite and claw too if a giant grabbed me by my midsection and picked me up and was showing me to all his other giant friends. So, I agitated the snake to the point where it did that. Not a whole lot of snakes just bite. Like if a snake is on the side of the trail and you walk by it, you're probably not going to it's probably not going to tag you just for fun. I've literally, just to give a tale here, this individual here, this copperhead, was in Medoc Mountain. And a buddy of mine were out, we were looking for snakes. We were on one of the main trails. There was a down pine branch, steel green needles and everything right there in the middle of the trail. There was a lizard that was on a branch directly in front of me. I stood and was taking pictures of the lizard with the pine branch directly in front of my feet. As I moved back and I kind of disturbed that fallen branch, this guy came out from underneath of it, and he went out the other side, and this is probably the biggest copperhead I've ever seen, at about roughly 3.5 feet long. This was a large copperhead. It was just as calm as could be. It came out the other side, it moved away from me. I followed it for a little bit and took some really nice photos. And it never showed any sort of trying to harass me. It coiled up like that after about 30 minutes of us interacting with it. Like literally it took a while before that thing started being like, okay, I'm tired of the paparazzi taking pictures of me, please go away. But most snakes will give you a warning. Snakes are not often going to just bite you just because they want to bite you. That's that same individual right there after he came out from under and was underneath a bunch of rhododendron off the side of the trail. Yes?
How far can they,
How far what's the strike range?
can they launch or jump or?
So general rule is 2/3 of the body length. So like if you have a 3-foot snake, it can strike 2 feet away. That is just a general rule that I go by. It might be a little less than that, but for the most part, like him, I gave him a good, like I said, via that orange cord there, I'm out of strike range. I have a hook. I can literally just hook him if I need to get him out of the path or anything like that.
Carter,
Yes.
maybe you can hang around a little bit longer?
Yes, I will hang around a little bit longer.
And answer some more questions.
And I
We
got-
have a couple.
I got some live snakes over there if anybody wants to see them. But and if I'll hang around as long as y'all want me to. Any questions